Hello, everyone. I think we're live now. Thank you very much for having attended our session. I'm just trying to open up the chat box to see if any questions are already coming through. I would like to briefly introduce myself. My name is Professor Richard Cook. I'm with the University of Liverpool. I'm also director of CAVA, as you probably have heard in the presentation, which is a center that sits and rests in the School of Architecture, but pursues research in the intersection between architecture and digital technology and media. And I'm joined here very kindly by Nayo Harding-Hill from Admin. Nayo, briefly introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks for attending the session. I'm Nayo Harding-Hill. I head up attractions and live experiences at Aardman, who are proud to be the brand partners for this immersive project. And
you would have seen in the film that we also had Marina Guo. Marina is a CAVA associate. She's working with us on this project, but she is actually living in Toronto, and is there in the middle of the night at the moment. So that wasn't a good moment for her to join. So we'll try to cover without her. Right. So the chat box is open. If there's any questions, you can ping them through. Let's see. I'm just gonna try to see if there's anything on direct messages. Nayo, if you see anything, then let me know. I'm just trying to get into the direct messages, which isn't that easy. All right. Thank God. Okay. So I'm not entirely sure. It looks to me as if my mouse is not particularly responsive. So I seem to have a new chat message, but I cannot access it. If you see anything in the chat message, perhaps you could read that out.
Sure. I've just had them
coming through.
Okay, so we've just had a message asking if location is still viable in a COVID world. That's a big question. Obviously, it's been a year of challenges. Generally and globally, attractions have worked incredibly hard to enable themselves to be COVID safe. It's had an impact on capacity, which has meant that when attractions are in the are kind of able to open, they've tended to function at capacities anywhere from 25% up to about 40%. That's kind of 50% is about the best that people have been managed to achieve. So in balance, visitor appetite has been huge. So when venues are open, they tend to be working at full capacity, even though that's a COVID capacity. So the reassuring kind of more long-term position is that the future looks bright. And, you know, particularly with the recent news about kind of vaccines being on the horizon. So hopefully as we move into next year, those capacities will increase and visitor confidence will be secure and increase. And we will hopefully kind of throughout next year into 2022, get into more normal situation again.
Yeah, I would like to echo what Nayo just said. I mean, we have seen a remarkable journey, really. We got the project awarded in February, and by March, the idea of location-based experience has shifted from being essentially one of the best ideas you could think of in the market at the time to becoming like the worst idea, and nobody sort of could conceive in the COVID world that we go into a location-based experience. But I totally agree with what Nayo said. I think the appetite for location-based experiences is incredibly high. Just look what's happening at the moment around the UK with the lockdown, how much our inner city centers suffer, for instance, how much people miss to socialize, how much they miss to to attend cultural and entertainment events. This is certainly an unsustainable situation, and it will change. And I think we will see a massive swing back, because I think certainly some of the cultural partners that I'm working with are beginning to realize how important sort of a digital world is for them. And I think it will be probably in the future a mix between location-based experiences and also remote experiences. So I think the latter of which has obviously become very important in the past month. And I think if there's anything positive out of the COVID crisis, then I probably would say is that, there is a high appreciation at the moment of a world that is digitally enhanced and allows us to communicate and continue our life in some shape or form by digital means. So I see a very bright future for location-based experiences.
And I think even in a just to kind of complete that point, even in a pre-COVID world, we were beginning to see a shift from kind of retail landlords that were acknowledging the power of location-based entertainment in terms of driving footfall in the face of the challenge of online shopping. Obviously, that's been kind of magnified in a way that's completely unprecedented 12 months ago. So I think as we kind of come out of this process, there will be a really kind of important shift in terms of the model for enabling location-based entertainment to be included within the retail environment to drive that footfall.
That's right. I have a question via direct message that has come to me, and it says, "Why does Shaun the Sheep appeal to a Chinese audience? Do you think it is the same appeal as in the UK?" Nayo, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I think there's a global factor to Shaun's appeal, which I think is also relevant to Shaun the Sheep, which is that basically the brand is very much based on the family, and that family dynamic is a global dynamic that appeals in China as much as it does appeal in the UK. It also has it's based on slapstick humour traditions, which again have real international appeal, and also kind of reach in terms of levels that will appeal to very young audience, but also has a kind of a sophistication in the performance that appeals to more adult audiences. So in those elements, there are global factors that relate to China as much as the UK. However, I think what Shaun also represents in China is this that nature has, particularly in the kind of urban Chinese environment, where there is very much a kind of a drive and an awareness and a kind of a desire for a connection between the natural world. And I think this is something that's being kind of encouraged and driven from the very top in China as well, really trying to kind of get people to connect with nature and the impact it has on them, even if you are living in the city, in the center of a very large Chinese city. So I think that particularly within the location-based entertainment and attraction sector is a real draw for Shaun as a brand in China.
Yeah, I think I could add to that obviously Shaun the Sheep is, as many of the Aardman productions, have a very particular kind of humor, which is often contextual as well. So we are taking great concern and take that issue very serious, that whatever we produce is going to work in the cultural context. And we have a very dedicated team and work package that looks into exactly that very aspect. On the whole, I have to say, however, Shaun the Sheep, it's non-dialogue based. It's a sort of slapstick. It's something that transgresses cultural boundaries quite well, and also language barriers. So whenever I was in the presence of Chinese partners and friends watching Shaun the Sheep sequences and episodes, they seem to have no problem to enjoy it as much as I do it.
To Anna's comment. Yeah. So how is a company like Aardman pivoting to bring its IP into immersive? Do they see a strong consumer market emerging? So, I mean, this is a journey that we've been on for many years. Licensing to attractions and life experiences, one of our kind of portfolio of licensing opportunities that we have developed to essentially kind of enable us to do our core bit, which is produce content. So there's kind of nothing new in this strategy. It's something that has, we've been working on and focused on for many years in terms of the strong consumer market. I mean, we have a huge merchandising program with licensees spanning 170 countries around the world. So yeah, it's very much something that we have been involved and committed to for a fair amount of time already.
Okay, I'm still battling with my chat window. I can't really see, I can't get into the chat window for some reason. So I'm not sure if there's another question.
I think we've addressed the ones that have come in so far.
That's right.
So perhaps, hopefully, our presentations were extensive enough. Oh, here we go. Who are Shaun's, this is a question from Tara, who are Shaun's biggest competitors in China? I mean, within the our kind of sector, we have, obviously, there are the big players. There are the kind of the Disney brands and Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. We also, brands like kind of Snoopy are a kind of brand that has a kind of a resonance and a similar audience. I think, the kind of international IP has begun to kind of have a presence in China. I think what Aardman and Shaun the Sheep establishes is a kind of, there's a kind of a legacy and a heritage that appeals very successfully that other brands don't have. Yeah, I think that's probably answer that question, I think.
Now, perhaps you can speak a little bit about the recent intervention you had in one of the shopping malls that I think had quite good feedback as well.
We have an ongoing brand partnership with Fila, who did a large kind of a Shaun the Sheep partnership with a merchandise campaign, and launched it in all their flagship shops across the country. And on the recent 11/11 shopping day, I think they exceeded their sales were kind of 3 billion, the equivalent of kind of $3 billion US. I think it's the most successful brand partnership that we have had internationally, even when you look at the kind of the scale of sales that are achievable in China. And throughout China, we've had a kind of a legacy of promotional partnerships and event partnerships, and also kind of touring stage shows, and a range of reach that has really kind of embedded the brand awareness throughout the country, and not simply relied on the kind of more traditional broadcast channels, although it has played out on CCTV for many years now. And there's an international IP that's quite a significant achievement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's something I didn't really fully appreciate when I first got in contact with Aardman, is how broad of a brand profile and footprint you have actually internationally. So obviously, my contact point was only what I saw on TV, but you have a much broader portfolio of work to offer, including even some location-based experiences elsewhere, I think, in Scandinavia.
Yeah, around the world. Japan is a huge territory for this area of our business as well. We have kind of farm attractions and play parks, cafes, themed retail across Japan. It's a really successful territory for us. And it kind of linked into one of the other questions that was coming through, which is kind of how do Chinese families react to UK humour, which I think, to the point that we touched on earlier, that in terms of the English humour within Shaun the Sheep, I think the slapstick nature of it really appeals in a global way. And actually, you see a lot of slapstick humour used within Chinese productions, and a lot of the kind of storytelling performance traditions that they have. So that resonates really well, kind of more broadly in terms of how the Chinese react to UK humour, I don't have expertise really to answer that more fully than in terms of how they react to our humour. I mean, what we find internationally in terms of other brands, if you look at something like Wallace and Gromit, that dialogue, but because it does have a very English sense of humour, there are kind of certain challenges that Shaun the Sheep manages to avoid dialogue, and the humour is very physical. Some of the kind of subtleties and nuances that you see in the humour of Wallace and Gromit don't transfer internationally, but actually China, Japan, South Korea, in Indonesia, they are strong territories for Wallace and Gromit. So there is obviously a kind of a resonance there.
Okay.
Maybe this is one for you, Richard. It's a question that's raised. What are the biggest challenges developing projects in China in terms of cross-cultural differences?
Yes, the biggest challenge is to actually keep pace with the Chinese pace. I think in my experience with my collaborations in China is that our Chinese partners are extremely committed and extremely determined once they have settled on certain objectives and goals to actually execute them in a very timely and very efficient manner. And that's not always the case of how I can operate within my own framework. I think some of our clocks are just ticking a little bit slower, and certain things take a little bit more time. So that was to me a quite an eye opener. So yeah, my Chinese partners are very competent and very fast paced. So.
And I think within the kind of LBE world, there's been huge kind of progress, amazingly rapid progress made in terms of the kind of expectation, not only of the developers and operators, but also the audiences, that was really triggered by the opening of Disneyland in Shanghai back in 2016. And I think that has created a kind of benchmark at international standards that really kind of widely Chinese developers and operators are now kind of responding to, and you know, again, it's the level that audiences expect, particularly when the attraction includes international IP. So that's been, I mean, yeah, really, really kind of fast speed of change there, but a very positive development as far as partnering with Chinese developers as a international IP owner.
Right. I'm slightly frustrated because I cannot see any chat. I cannot. I keep clicking on it and hoping that I will be seeing any of the questions coming through. So
I'll just, there's one, maybe I'll take the next one, and then there's one I'll pass on to you, Richard. Is there a market for UK comedy more broadly than in China? Is Shaun the Sheep going down well there? Yeah, very much so. It's I think part of the appeal of our brand is also in terms of the collaborations that we have and the projects that we develop, is that we are a very kind of creatively collaborative company to work with. We're very nimble, we're very responsive to the kind of objectives and ambitions of our clients. And when we go into relationships and developments, we do a lot of kind of due diligence to make sure that kind of creatively there is a cohesion there. And we feel, you know, we turn away far more projects than we commit to for that reason, because we do see it as a very strong kind of partnership, both creatively and commercially. And within the world of attractions and LBE, you know, you are talking about relationships that can last, you know, 10 to 15 years. So, you know, kind of even more important to us is that kind of due diligence process that we do before we actually commit and embark on a project. There's another question. It says, this project has great potential beyond Shaun. What's your long-term ambition for the future? Richard, if that's one you can, I'm not sure if that's it's directed to both of us.
I guess we could both answer it. I mean, for us, as someone who's leading a research center, that is also, we have done a number of location-based experiences and immersive projects. I think for us, this is the first proper international testing ground of 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 developing a location-based experience for a very large audience. So I think for us, obviously, our goal and ambition would be is to take those lessons learned and take them further in other kinds of projects that will come along our way. Hopefully, there will be many more to come with Altman, but it's also conceivable that other partners might approach us. The background of my work lies also with cultural partners such as museums and galleries, and I can see a degree of demand from that sector as well, for instance. So I could imagine that some of the lessons that we're going to learn from this experience in a family entertainment audience within the Chinese cultural context might be applicable elsewhere.
Yep. And I think from the kind of Shaun and Aardman point of view, it is very much about kind of, stretching the boundaries and embracing and kind of creating experiences using kind of new technologies. And I think, the learning that we achieve through this project will be something that we kind of apply across our kind of studio and the work that we produce going forward. I think I'm just looking back through the list to see if there's anything we've missed. I think we've answered the questions so far. Anna's just come to say thank you. Oh, hold on. I think Anna was just wrapping up, and then Sam's just popped a question in. How the success of Shaun? How does the success of Shaun mean that Aardman alter their creative approach for the Chinese market? How does the success of Shaun mean that Aardman alter their creative approach for the Chinese market? I'm not sure it does.
No,
it's a simple answer. I mean, our creative, in terms of the way we collaborate with the Chinese, it doesn't make any difference really what kind of country or culture. It's finding that kind of synergy and understanding and embracing, the kind of cultural elements and the creative elements that the kind of Chinese partners would bring to the project. So yeah, it's not a case of changing or altering our creative approach. It's about kind of finding a collaborative process that works works best for both parties.
I think I cannot speak for Aardman, but I think that with this project we can develop and trial perhaps an additional channel of delivery for Aardman content that is relevant for Shaun The Sheep, but potentially also other productions that Aardman produces. So I think that might be, but I guess it depends a little bit, obviously, with what we come up with and how successful it's going to be, whether that indeed is a feasible channel for future projects.
Richard, Sam expanded on his point slightly more, just to say that, as in, will you use Chinese narratives in future storylines, for example? I think was the kind of point he was getting to. I mean, in terms of this project, then finding a narrative that does kind of embrace kind of Chinese culture and relate and kind of support the kind of creative objectives of the team and the audience is something that we are working on. I mean, in terms of Shaun the Sheep more broadly, in terms of kind of core production, whether Chinese narratives would be included is not something I'm in a position to comment on. But in terms of this project, Richard, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit more to this point.
I mean, we are at a very enjoyable stage at the moment because we're working with our Chinese partners, which is a creative team at the Shanghai Theatre Academy, which consists of animation people, creative writers, producers, and a sizable and highly competent Aardman team on developing a story for our particular immersive experience, and that is going to be one, obviously, that is very much tailored to a Chinese audience and will include elements of a cultural context. So at the moment, we are in this creative process where we are in dialogue with our Chinese partners to see what type of characters one might expect to see in a Shaun the Sheep episode that is playing in Shanghai, what type of environments might be able to see, and what type of moral values and situations could be conceivable for such a episode to be played out in China. And more than that, I don't think I can comment any further. But I think that's probably the extent to the question that was asked that I can answer.
Yeah, I think it is. It's very much about, this work is very focused on creating a narrative that resonates with the audience. And again, I think that's always been the success of the approach that we've taken in all these kind of international partnerships, is that we've all managed to achieve that.
Good question.
It was. Yeah, thanks, Sam. Okay, I think that might have been the end. So
good,
thank you. Yes, thank you everyone that's joined, and thank you for the questions.
Thank you as well from my side, and I hope to see any of you in the future at another conference, or indeed in person. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.